Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Microsoft Data and AI User Group. My name is Adriano, your host, and today we have another outstanding, insightful presentation. And before we get started, let's talk about the dynamics of the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter your questions in the live chat window during the presentation. If you're watching this presentation after it has completed, use the comment section below to enter your questions, and we will follow up with the presenter after the presentation. Now, during the presentations, what we will be doing, we will be taking your questions, and during transition points, we will ask the presenter the questions. And today, we will be covering some very exciting topic, talking about Azure Data Factory, SSIS, SQL Server, Azure SQL DB. So it is very insightful, very hands-on. You'll be doing very little slides and a lot of action on portal, and get you quite familiar with the process here. So remember, like, subscribe, click the bell to get alerts when videos and new presentations are uploaded to the channel, as well as remember to engage with us on Meetup. For information on that, on the description below. Just take a look at it and subscribe to the channel as well. So today we have Azure Data Factory, Lift and Shift with Torsten Strauss. Now, before we get started, drop a comment here. Let us know where you're at, and let us know whether you can see and hear us well. So, hello, let's take a quick look here. Hello, Gina, and hello, Gavaskar. Pardon me here for any mispronunciation. Welcome to you all, and welcome everybody else. Keeping the river here. Let's welcome Torsten.
Yeah.
Hello, Torsten. Can you hear me?
Hello, Adriano. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Cool.
To the Microsoft Data AI South Florida. Once again, we look forward to your very exciting presentation. Before we get started, can you tell us where are you located at?
Yeah, I'm located in Germany, a small city called Bochum, which is close to Düsseldorf. Maybe this is known for people from abroad. So Düsseldorf has a very big airport.
Yes, all right. And thank you for making the time to be here with us, as well as to those currently watching. Looking forward to your insights. And can you tell us a little bit about your presentation?
Yeah. So what I'm going to present is the way Microsoft implemented SSIS lift and shift. So the idea is to use existing SSIS packages which you execute in an on-premise environment, so that you can. I mean, it is not a very easy task, as you will see, but there is at least a way in order to migrate these SSIS packages to the Azure cloud and execute the packages either from an SSIS DB catalog database or from Azure Data Factory. So it's up to you. That is the main goal, to make you familiar with this approach. And believe me, it is not a very easy one.
I understand. Yes, there are some challenges there. And without further ado, let's get started. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes. Yeah. Cool.
All right. I just added it, and I can see your slide right now.
Yep. Good. Then I will start from here.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you then.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Adriano. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to speak another time. Very excited about it. So yeah, my name is Torsten Strauss. consultant, trainer, and speaker located in Germany, as already mentioned. I mean, maybe the most important one on this slide is my email address. Yeah, so feel free to send me an email when you have questions with regards to SSIS lift and shift or other problems. So I cannot promise for sure to answer all your questions, but if it is a small question which I can answer, I'm more than happy to do. Okay, that's all about PowerPoint, and what I want to present is again the way you can reuse your existing SSIS packages which you maybe created over the last years. So, and I know several companies, they have a big environment, a lot of SSIS packages, but for sure they want to migrate to the Azure cloud. You know, almost every company is migrating to AWS or Azure, or at least to a cloud, and now you are a little bit in trouble because you have a lot of SSIS packages created over the years, right? And how can you migrate them to a cloud? So and that's about that is what I'm going to talk about. So you can see this is a picture which I took from Microsoft. You can see this is the official documentation. And what you can see here is one example, right? We can see here on the bottom that we have some flat files. Maybe we still have some kind of on-premise SQL databases, or maybe, I don't know, SAP instances running on-premise, on an on-premise server. And you have your SSIS packages. And now, and this is definitely something I want to demonstrate, you can migrate these SSIS packages to Azure. And depending on your on-premise environments, you also have to install so-called integration runtime, a self-hosted on-premise integration runtime, as we will see, in order to access the data. So there's another option, which I'm also going to present. You can use the same VNet, right? VNet, as they call it, VNet peering, right? Or you can create all your resources within the same subnet. Then there is no need to use self-hosted integration runtime to access your on-premise resources. But I would say when you have an SSIS on-premise environment, which you want to bring into your cloud environment, it is very likely that you also have to install and configure a self-hosted integration runtime, as we will see, depending on your current architecture and also landscape. Here, this is what I already mentioned. There are at least two ways in order to execute your SSIS packages in Azure. Either you use Data Factory, right, to create some kind of a master package, to execute your package in the right order, and you have the full control and also the full visibility and all these kind of nice stuff like monitoring, and everything is available in the Azure Data Factory when you execute an SSIS packages from there. Or for sure, you can easily create, I don't know, maybe an Azure runbook, and you can start your SSIS packages by a stored procedure. This is something I'm going to present as well. So what I want to say, there is not always a need to use Azure Data Factory to execute an SSIS package, but I would say maybe it is the best way, but I cannot decide. It really depends on the requirements, right? So this is just I would say this is a rough architecture, but at least I guess it will give you an idea about about not the complexity, but the different layers we have. We have our on-premise layer, we have our cloud layer, and now we need to bring everything together. That is the idea of Azure Data Factory, or SSIS lift and shift. So I will close this one because otherwise it's a little bit confusing for me. And I will leave this for now, because before And what I have is, maybe first of all, I want to give you a quick summary so about the resources which I'm using, because otherwise I will go to different resources and it's very hard to follow. So what you can see here is Visual Studio, right? We have some SSIS packages, so some one solution, 2 projects. One project is not Azure enabled. One project is already enabled for the lift and shift, and I will tell you how you can enable your project and which kind of pre-requirements you have to fulfill in order to bring your SSIS packages into the Azure cloud. So that is the reason why I have 2 projects within one solution. So that's about Visual Studio. For sure, I have Management Studio. Here, as we will see, I have 2 databases. I will leave it. I will keep it for now. I have 2 databases. I will for sure explain later on what other databases are about. And then we have the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer with some storage account, blob accounts, or blob container, not blob account, blob containers. And I also installed some they call it what is it? What is the name for the SSIS? It's in some kind of a feature pack which you can install in order to connect to, I don't know, to an Azure blob storage, for example, or to data lake or whatever. Just want to give you a brief summary about the technology which I'm going to use during the presentation. That's all. So now we can start. So let me go to the Azure Data Factory portal another time. So I have 2 instances here. So that is the current instance is called DB-Nets, SSIS, and you can see I already have the auto-resolve integration runtime, which is always there. Then I have a self-hosted integration runtime. I will show you later, how to set up or how to install and configure the self-hosted integration runtime. But first of all, I want to concentrate on the Azure SSIS integration runtime, because when you have your Visual Studio SSIS project available, this one, the first step you have to do is you need to configure your SSIS, also your Azure SSIS integration runtime. I have already one, but this is currently stopped. And when it is stopped, and this is the only way to do it, you can change, or you can also review the current configuration of the SSIS integration runtime. That is the reason why I stopped the integration runtime, because I want to show you the current configuration. Let me do this. So, and this is exactly the same process you will follow, when you set up the Azure SSIS integration runtime the very first time. But I do not want to enter all the configuration settings another time, because it takes too long. That is the reason why I'm just stopping, showing you the configuration, and restart the already configured Azure SSIS integration runtime. So for sure, you have to give it a meaningful name, and really give it a meaningful name. So I'm really keen on having some kind of naming convention in place, so, but it is up to you. At least give it a meaningful name. You can give it a meaningful description. Here, I do not see any reason to do it. Then you have to decide, or you have to set the right location. And this is something which is really, really important, because the location have to be very close to your, I would say, Azure Data Factory instance, right? It doesn't make sense to have another, I mean, sometimes there is a need to do it, but in general, I would say you should always use the same location, because otherwise your overall the Azure Data Factory performance will suffer from network latency, right? So again, make sure that you use the same location in all your, I would say, integration runtimes when possible, right? So then you have the node size, and you can see that we have several node sizes available, and you can see some there's a difference in terms of the number of available cores, and if this is a compute or memory, I would say optimized VM, because we are talking about a VM. So in the background, Microsoft will create a VM for you, and I'm pretty sure this VM will be shared by other Azure Data Factories, but I have no clue about it. So Microsoft does not reveal how it really works. Honestly, it is not very important to know how it works. You only have to worry about the right node size. And in order to give you a hint, let me go to the configuration. So I would say everything, almost everything with regards to SSIS, so Azure Data, SSIS, lift and shift, is some kind of documented, but you have, I would say, so many different places, yeah, to get the information. That was at least my problem when I started to migrate an existing SSIS environment to the Azure cloud. It was really hard, yeah, to find the right start and to have an understanding about the right configuration and all these kind of settings, properties you have to apply in order to make it work. Yeah. It is really not a very easy exercise, at least for me. Yeah. So you can see that Microsoft give us some idea about the size of my VM, right, and the speed of package execution, yeah, on the dedicated VM, yeah, and with a maximum parallel count of 1, because otherwise it's very hard to compare, right? And you can see, depending on the size of the VM, yeah, you get a better speed, but you always have to pay more. So I would say when the first time you configure and set up your SSIS integration runtime, you can start very small, and if you see that you're running into performance issues and you think the reason is that your VM does not have the power, yeah, to scale, then it makes sense to upgrade, yeah, or upscale, I would say. Otherwise, I think it really doesn't make sense to start maybe with the biggest VM, yeah, because maybe you do not need that one, but you will pay for it. So here we have another graph which will show you the overall throughput, yeah, and you can see the same VMs here another time. And for sure, this VM, which cost, I'm pretty sure, a lot of money, have the best throughput. But again, it's a question: do you really need this? I have no idea. Start small, and then maybe you can upscale. So that's about the node size. Then you have the number of nodes. That is, for sure, you can scale out, yeah, to run packages in parallel across multiple nodes. Yeah, and from my understanding, you also have some kind of a failover, yeah, possibility here. So that means when for some reason one of your node becomes unavailable, let me do this, I don't know, maybe in the end I will end up with at least 2, then from my understanding, at least what I read from the documentation, is that Microsoft will automatically fail over to the other node. Yeah? So I think this is even more important than the node size. Yeah? If you want to have a reliable solution, I would say it is definitely better to have at least 2 nodes available. Yeah? So I will go back to 1 because otherwise I have to pay a lot of money for it. Here you have to decide for the enterprise for the edition or the license, and you have, that's what I want to say, you have a standard or you have an enterprise license. And why this is important because in the standard edition, you are missing some features. I don't know whether I still have it open. I think it is also documented here somewhere. Otherwise, at least I remember. Let me search for enterprise. Here, enterprise. Yes. Here you can see the differences. And CDC component is the one which I remember at least. Yeah. So CDC source, control task, and so forth. You can read this. Everything is documented for sure. This is not it is not available when you decide to go with a standard license. If you need these features, which you can see here, fuzzy grouping, term extraction, analysis service components, SAP, BW connectors, Teradata, you can see them here. If you need these features, you have to decide to create your Azure SSIS Integration Runtime with an enterprise license. So I decided to go with an enterprise license, so there are no restrictions in terms of the features I can use. And for sure, you can, if you have already a SQL Server license, you can say yes. Then you have these kind of hybrid benefits available. So that's fine. I will continue this one because this is not very, very complicated, but you need to understand the settings. And then I would say nothing is complicated anymore. So the next deployment setting, or the next setting, configuration setting, is the deployment setting. So for sure, you want to have an SSIS DB catalog database available in your in Azure. So what you are actually doing is you create, and I'm not creating another one because this is already there. That is the reason why it is currently grayed out. So, but I have a catalog database service endpoint here, which is nothing else. And now let me go to Management Studio. That is nothing else than my Azure SQL DB. You can see it here. So SRV DB-Nets, database Windows.net. So you can see it is a SQL database. So it can be either a SQL database or an Azure managed instance, where you host your SSIS DB. So you can see it here. What I want to add here is, because this is also a very important consideration for your architecture and also for, I would say, for scaling, performance, and so forth, and also in terms of cost. Every single Azure Data Factory instance, so let me go back. This is one instance, and for sure I have more. I do not want to switch my Azure Data Factory now because I'm currently doing the configuration here. But every single Azure Data Factory instance can only use one SSIS DB. That means if you have, let's say, 10 different Azure Data Factories, you will end up with 10 dedicated SSIS DBs. So that's not bad, but there's also the reason why you really have to think carefully about the size. So you can see the catalog database service tier here, which you can define. And again, you should start small. And maybe if you think it makes sense to upscale your SSIS DB catalog, you can do it here. And here's also, you can also have some kind of a failover functionality, right? So anyway, so my recommendation is not to use a SQL administrator or a SQL account, so SQL authentication, in order to connect to your Azure SQL DB. Instead, use a managed service identity. For now, I'm using SQL authentication because I didn't create a managed service identity which is able to connect to the SSIS DB for now. That's the only reason, but I really want to emphasize in terms of best practices, much more secured, much more reliable to use a managed service identity instead of SQL authentication. Anyway, you need to connect to your database, to your SSIS DB, which will be created after the configuration, right? So let me continue. So now we are in the advanced settings, and you can say how many parallel executions you want to have at maximum per node. That is about performance consideration. So you can either say, I want to have, I don't know, maybe one parallel execution per node. That means this is different to, I don't know, maybe 8. You can see it here. That means the more packages you allow to be executed on the same node, the less compute power is available for this concurrent package. So this is something maybe you can adjust over the time. I will start with 2. I think this is the recommendation from Microsoft. Yeah, but again, this is something maybe when you do not have a very CPU consuming packages, you can definitely set a higher number here, right? Otherwise, you have to reduce it. So, and now it becomes a little bit more complicated. Yes, and this wasn't that easy to figure out how it works in the end when you do it the first time. I'm pretty sure it is a little bit, yeah, it's difficult to set up. So what you can do is you can create a so-called main CMD file, and I will give you one example. We will use this later on, but this is a place where you have to do it. That is the reason why I want to show it for you. Yeah. So let me open the main CMD. So the main CMD is nothing else than a file, so a CMD file, which you upload to a specific blob container. So and now you wonder, why should I do this? The reason is that Azure Data Factory has, I would say, the other way around. When you have a connection within integration services, which uses Windows authentication and not SQL authentication, you need to have a Windows user. You can see it here. I have a domain, right? I have a Windows user and a password. The problem is that if you do not provide the user and the password, Azure Data Factory is not able to connect to your on-premise, in this case, yeah, an on-premise SQL Server or file share or whatever. So the idea is to add all your Windows authentications, yeah, to your main CMD file. I don't know, let's call it SQL2, just to give you an example. Right? Normally, for sure, this will be a different server. I know, call it net2 or whatever, and maybe it's a different password. I mean, I'm pretty sure you understand how it works. This is just a list of Windows users and the connection. You can see the connection here, right? And the password to make sure that Azure Data Factory now will use the right Windows user for a specific connection to connect to your on-premise data source. Again, this can be a file share, it can be a SQL Server, it can be any type of on-premise data source which needs a Windows authentication. And we will go back. We will come back to this point. But for now, consider the main CMD file as a list of Windows users, as a list of connection strings with Windows users and passwords. So when you have it, when you define it, over the time you can add more and more connections to your main CMD file. You have to upload this main CMD file. Let me go to the appropriate here, to a dedicated blob container. So in this case, the blob container is called Azure Integration Runtime. So here you will upload the main CMD file, and you can maintain the main CMD file. When you do some changes, you have to restart the SSIS DB. Yeah? So let me go back, the integration services, which I'm currently doing. Yeah? So without restarting, the new connection isn't available, or let's say isn't visible and cannot be used by the Azure SSIS integration runtime. Yeah? So you have to stop it, you have to start it. Otherwise, these changes will not be applied. So, and you can see, so after, I mean, I guess you have a rough understanding about what the main CMD file is about. Yeah? What is the purpose of it? Yeah? Again, just a list of connections. And here you enter the SAS, let's call it the connection string, to your blob container. You can see it here. This is my blob container. This is, I would say, very well documented when you know, or the other way around, when you understand what the reason is, yeah, to do it. I mean, otherwise you have no idea how an Azure Data Factory instance can use Windows authentication to access on-premise data sources. That is one way to do it. There's another way to do it, and you can use this approach together with the so-called Express custom setup. So here we can say the same run cmd key. Yeah, if we go back to, sorry, if we go back to my file, you can see this is exactly the same command. So I decided to have an Express custom setup type of run cmd command. And here you can say I can add a target computer domain name. Yeah, so I can do the same here. Sorry, it's always the same as the wrong window. That is the one I'm using. Let me do this. Let me add this. Yes, computer domain name. I can add a user. Yeah, it's not a valid one. Yeah, but I just want to give you an example. For whatever reason, it wasn't accepted. I do not want to generate a password. I just want to say, I don't know, dbnets admin, something like this. I'm not adding the key because this will not work anyway, but you can list more and more connection strings, yeah, Windows authentication connection strings in the Express custom setup. The good thing about this approach is that the password is masked, so no one can see the password. Whereas when you go to the why I'm always opening the wrong file, sorry for that. That is a file I want to show. So here in the main CMD file, you have a plain password. That is, I mean, for sure, you can secure your blob storage and you can give only administrators the permission to see the main CMD file. But in the end, it is a CMD file. It's nothing else than a text file. And within your text file, you can for sure see the passwords, right? That can be a concern. I worked with a company, yeah, and they told me this is a no-go. I mean, even you can secure your blob storage, yeah, your blob container, where the CMD file is located. It is nothing we can accept, right? And maybe this approach is a little bit better because, again, the password is not visible anymore. And I will show you another approach with Azure Key Vault, which also works. Yeah? It's on you to decide what works best for you. So this is about Windows authentication. And now it even becomes a little bit more complicated when you do it the first time and no one really tells you how it works. So in order to access your on-premise data sources, and let me go back to this picture now. So we can see we have our on-premise data sources. In order to access the on-premise data sources, yeah, we need to install either a so-called self-hosted integration runtime, which we will do in a minute or maybe 5 minutes, I have no idea. Or we can join the same VNet, right? So first of all, I would assume that it is very likely that you will use a self-hosted integration runtime to access your on-premise data sources, because sometimes it is too complicated to change your existing, I would say, VNet architecture. Yeah, or you do not have the driver available. Maybe sometimes this is a flat file, so in a, I don't know, in a file share, this is not a big deal. SQL Server is fully supported, but maybe you have a specific called application, yeah, where you need to have a specific driver. So you cannot, I do not want to say you cannot, but it is very easy to set up the self-hosted integration runtime on a VM within your, I don't know, within your landscape for sure. And then you can install the driver on this VM. The self-hosted integration runtime can be shared by more than one Azure Data Factory, which I did. I will come back to the integration runtime for sure. But first of all, you need to understand why a self-hosted integration runtime is needed. And again, it's very likely that you need to install something like this when not every single data source is available in the cloud already, right? So, and consider the self-hosted integration runtime as a gateway. That means we have our firewall here, and the integration runtime, the self-hosted integration runtime, now acts as a gateway in order to exchange data between the cloud and your local on-premise data sources. Yeah. So otherwise, your firewall will completely block the access. So let me go back. So this is what you can see here. Here, so let's go first to the self-hosted integration runtime. Let me uncheck this one. Yeah, I decide to set up a self-hosted integration runtime as a proxy for your Azure SSIS integration runtime. Yes, I want to do it. So it will automatically scan, so Azure Data Factory automatically scan the available self-hosted integration runtimes, and you can see it here. Yeah, there's one, ER DBNets, and we will create an integration runtime after this configuration. So, and what you also, or what is also required is a staging storage link server. So from my understanding, this is something which you can see here. So whenever you need the data access to your on-premise data sources by the self-hosted integration runtime, the process will copy the file to a staging area within a dedicated blob container. So I have one here. Let me go back. So this one, this SSIS staging temp data. This is the blob container which is created by default. Yeah? So when you have a blob, when you have a storage account, and you will give the setup the access to your storage account, the blob container SSIS staging temp data will be automatically created for you. I don't like the name. That is the reason why I have another blob container which will replace the SSIS staging temp data, which is called ADF staging. It's a little bit more meaningful for me, the name, but it's up to you to decide. It will, for sure, it will still work. It is not dependent on names or whatever. So if you leave it blank, right? So it will use the SSIS staging temp data. If you put in a different container name, so this staging path is used instead. So that is about the self-hosted integration runtime and the integration within your Azure SSIS integration runtime. So as already mentioned, there is another way which I highly recommend, because what you also have to understand is that your self-hosted integration runtime will be located on a VM. That means you have to pay for a VM just for your self-hosted integration runtime, right? And the self-hosted integration runtime needs maintenance. So we will see this in a minute. So you can schedule the, I would say, the automatic update, and I don't know, Microsoft will update your integration runtime, I think, once a month automatically. But anyway, there's some kind of an overhead, right? So, and again, we will use the VM for it. It can be an Azure VM for sure. So it doesn't have to be an on-premise VM, but you know that a VM within Azure is considered as infrastructure as a service, and it is not a PaaS offer. So for me, if there is a way to to avoid using a self-hosted integration runtime, this would be a much better approach. But again, sometimes it is not possible to do so. But if there is a chance, you can use the, I would say, the VNet peering, the VNet ingestion. So when I go to portal and I will go to my virtual machine, which is one example for my on-premise data source here, right? So I'm currently here and I want to access the data by the Azure Data Factory without the integration runtime, right? We already know how this works, but I completely want to eliminate the need of an integration runtime. So we can use something which is called VNet peering. I hope this is here. Yes, VNet peering. We search for it. Peering. Yes, here we go. So you can see that the VNet of my on-premise data source, which is a SQL Server on-premise in an Azure VM, is the left-hand side. And this VNet is paired with the integration, with the Azure Integration Runtime. So the Azure SSIS Integration Runtime, which we are currently configuring here in the portal. The good thing about the current setup is that you can, and I will show you later how you can say, I want to go the left or the right way, because we have two ways to do it. The good thing is that you can, first of all, create your self-hosted integration runtime, and you can configure it. You can add, I would say, the self-hosted integration runtime to your Azure SSIS integration runtime. But on the other hand, maybe you have other resources, where you can easily put them into the same subnet, or you can hear the VNets or whatever, as VNets. This is what you can do here as well. So two ways to access the on-premise data sources. And for sure, this is a recommended one. So we can validate the VNet. And hopefully it works. Yes, it works. That wasn't that easy to figure out how it works. Believe me, I had several calls with Microsoft engineers, and it wasn't that easy to figure out how it works from that perspective, right? So what needs to be, I would say, which kind of VNets needs to be joined, and there's an Azure batch, and there's a lot of more things which you need to do, but I do not want to go into that detail. I just want to give you an idea, because when you search for VNet peering Azure Data Factory lift and shift, I'm pretty sure you will find a solution which is somewhere documented. Okay, so let's continue. I hope I didn't know. I explained everything here. And this is just a summary, right? You get a summary, and for sure it will create an ARM template for you, and you can reuse the same configuration over and over again in your other Azure Data Factory instances. Let me cancel this one, because again, I do not want to mess up something. It was already configured. I will start the integration runtime now, which will take a while depending on the number of nodes. So I think I have only one node. Should not take longer than 5 minutes. But if you have more than one node, at least I was told that the nodes will be started sequentially. That means it will take longer and longer the more nodes you add to your Azure SSIS integration runtime. So let's talk a little bit about the self-hosted integration runtime. You can see this self-hosted integration runtime. Again, this is the integration runtime you need to access your on-premise data sources, this one. So it is linked. You can see the subtype is linked. So the good thing about the self-hosted integration runtime is that you can set up a self-hosted integration runtime within your environment. and you can share the same self-hosted integration runtime over all your existing Azure Data Factory instances. Let me go to the original this one, Azure Data Factory. So, and I consider this as best practice, yeah, to have one Azure Data Factory instance, which I would say acts like a central integration runtime host. Let's call it like this. So we can see we have the the integration runtime here, which is configured very easy. Yeah, you only, as you can see, we only have to click here to launch the Express setup, or you can download and install the integration runtime on your own, yeah, and go through the setup. But anyway, believe me, it's very easy. I have one on my machine and I have one on the VM. Yeah. For some reasons, I cannot access my VM anymore. Don't ask me why. I cannot reset my password. That is the reason why I decided to install the integration runtime on my laptop, at least to show you how you can access the integration runtime. You can see it here on the VM. It looks exactly the same. We only have another key, and the key is used. You can see it here. The key is used to integrate the integration runtime with your Azure Data Factory. So this is the link between your on-premise integration runtime and Azure Data Factory, right? Because otherwise you cannot secure it anymore. So I do not want to talk about settings. This is what I mentioned, update. Yeah. So it is up to date, but you can, somewhere you had a chance to schedule this. I think you have to stop it first, and then I don't remember anymore of how to do it. Somewhere you have a chance to say, I would like to schedule my update, I don't know, once a month at midnight or whatever. I didn't remember the place anymore, but this is really not important. But I remember that I mentioned it. The important one is now we have our integration runtime installed on this machine. And what I can, and believe me, I spent days, really days, because nothing was working because of so many reasons. And whenever I was able to resolve one problem, another problem came up. It was a nightmare. So I will give you at least some hints here. First of all, ensure that you are using TLS 1.2 on your, in this case, on-premise VM. If you're not using 1.2, it will not work. I mean, it is documented somewhere, but the error message, which you will see, and the error messages you can see in the event viewer. Let me go here. Application, I guess. Okay, it takes a moment. Yeah, here we have the integration runtime, and we have security and application. So it is mixed. Sometimes you can see connectors integration runtime. Sometimes you can see error messages in integration runtime. Sometimes you can see it in application. Sometimes you will see it in security, right? So when your integration runtime for some reason doesn't work, this is the very first place you should look for an appropriate error message. Believe me, the error messages are sometimes, how can I say it? They will direct you, or redirect you, I hope this is right, redirect you into a direction which is completely wrong. You can spend hours on that. Yeah. So, and again, believe me or not, you need to have TLS 1.2, otherwise it will not work. But you do not get any meaningful error message with regards to this, to the root cause of it. Yeah, this is just one example. So what you can do now is you can give it a try. So this is my current integration runtime, yeah, and I want to access data from a SQL Server which is currently running on a machine. Let me go to my text file. that is a one. So this is a full qualified domain name. We need, and here we can either go with SQL authentication or Windows authentication. For now, I will leave it with SQL authentication. I hope that is the right one. That is the right one. That is a SQL admin username. This is a password. And this will not work. It will work. Oh, this is a little bit, that's strange. It works. That's interesting. Sorry. This works because this is the SQL authentication that works. Now you want to, and that's perfectly fine. So that means I can access this VM by my integration runtime on premise. That means the Azure SSIS integration runtime can also access this on-premise data source by the self-hosted integration runtime. So now I want to test the Windows authentication. So this is where it will fail, I'm pretty sure. So there are several hints, at least, I would like to give you. So that is a password I'm using. And again, if you want to hack the SQL Server, I have no problem with this. There's only AdventureWorks on top of it. So test. This is strange. Why it is working today? So normally you need to add a domain. Let me add a domain. And this will fail. Okay, perfect. So what you need to do, and this was a little bit strange for me, you need to double the backslash. So, I mean, it is not very obvious. So when you test now, it works. So this was another example where you can spend some time in order to try to figure out why you're not able to test or to establish a connection to your on-premise data source, even you have the right Windows authentication, you have the right password, you have the right connection string, still doesn't work. Yeah. For some reasons, I don't know, you have to double the backslash. Yeah. TLS is another problem. Proxy, I would say the overall firewall settings is definitely something you need to consider. There's a lot of complexity in this tool, I would say. Anyway, it will act like a gateway, and when it is configured in the right way, it works. Yeah, at least it works. So let me go back, and you can see this is the integration runtime, which doesn't use my current integration runtime on my laptop. Instead, it will use the one which I installed on the VM. Again, I cannot access the VM anymore. I have no idea why. I cannot reset the password. Anyway, it works. I can start the VM. I can stop it. That's more than enough for a demo, and that is more than enough for everything else. Let me go back to my SSIS DB. Sorry, no, I want to stay here because I forgot to mention something. Here in sharing, for sure, you can also consider to run your integration runtimes on several VMs. So for failover and everything like this, this is the auto update. So here you can schedule this. Okay, perfectly fine. But what I want to show is sharing. What you can do is you can grant permission to another Azure Data Factory, for example, the ADF DB Nets SSIS DB, and you say add. This is what I already did. That means when I now go back to the other integration runtime instance, and not integration, Azure Data Factory instance, that one, we can see, and we saw it already. Let me go to integration runtime. That I have a linked integration runtime in this Azure Data Factory instance. Again, that is a very handy approach. You can set up your integration runtime once, you can scale it out, but you only have one, and maybe you have only one VM within your landscape. And by the way, is this still starting? This takes ages today. Okay, it's okay. Let's hope it will start. Anyway, so now we have our Azure SSIS integration runtime configured, and hopefully it will start in a few minutes. We have our self-hosted integration runtime installed to access our on-premise data sources, and for sure we have our auto-resolved integration runtime, which is always there, right? So what we need to do next is the following. We have our, let me close or at least collapse this one. We have our existing project. So in order to migrate this project to Azure Data Factory, we have to do several steps. First of all, we have to ensure that the project it is this on solution level. One second. I need to change it to, should be here. Here, sorry. We need to go to the target server version 2017 for whatever reasons. So when you have, when your project is configured to use SQL Server 2019, it will not work. So you have to go back and set it to SQL Server 2017. Don't ask me why. No idea. It is like this. So press OK. So the next thing you can try is, so you can see before the presentation, I already configured everything. But anyway, we can enable the project now, and we can assess the project for execution in Azure. So that means SSIS will now detect problems when you try to upgrade or to bring your SSIS packages to your Azure cloud. So we have a nice report. Yeah, some of them are, you can see it here. It's a migration blocker, and some of them are there for information. Yeah, it's definitely worth to read the information as well. But first of all, you should concentrate on your migration blocker, because without resolving the blocks, you are not able to migrate to Azure. And here's, for example, one migration blocker, and it will tell you the connection with the host name may fail because we are accessing an on-premise data source with Windows Authentication. Yeah, here you can see it. So there are additional information. Some of the articles are helpful. Some of the articles doesn't even exist anymore. Some of the articles are not very helpful. I really want to be honest, yeah. But that's okay. I mean, you get an idea. So when you now go into your packages, let me go to one, and I will, now you understand what you need to do. I will go to the other project, which is already enabled. So everything is already configured, perfectly fine. But here I have more than just one package. That is the reason why I'm now going to the other project within the same solution. There's no secret here, it's just because I have 3 packages available. Let me open this package. This is a very easy package. So I have an SSIS, sorry, an SQL execution task, just truncating a table, and then I have an Azure data flow, not an Azure data flow, data flow within SSIS. I have a source and I have a destination. Okay, so I have connection managers. For sure, this is a normal SSIS project. This is nothing really special. This is one of the easiest project ever, or package ever. So what you need to consider is the following. Within your connection manager, we have to go to properties, and we have to, it is very recommended to set the setting connect by proxy. You can see it here as well, depending on your project settings. So first of all, whenever you want to access the on-premise data source by your Azure self-hosted integration runtime, we go back to this picture because I know it's a little bit confusing. So we are here, and we are migrating the SSIS packages finally to the Azure Data Factory, to the SSIS DB, Azure SSIS catalog to be precise, right? And we want to access the on-premise data sources by the integration runtime, the self-hosted integration runtime, because this is the only way. VNet ingestion doesn't work. So we have to change the setting connect by proxy. False is the default. True means when I now upgrade the package or load the package into the Azure SSIS DB, the connection will be established by the self-hosted integration runtime. That is the reason why I have an expression here. Let me go to the solution. Let me go to the project parameters. You can see I have two of them, connect by proxy, execute on proxy, and both of them are, one second, edit parameter, where was it here? Yes, let's say this is a new parameter, and I want to add a parameter to the configuration. You can see I have at least two, I have more, but I added a new configuration within Visual Studio, which I called Azure. So that means I can now say I want to add a new parameter. I just want to show you how I did it. For sure, the parameter which I'm currently adding is not needed to execute the SSIS packages in the cloud, but the other two parameters are needed, and I want to show you how it works. So you set up your parameter, and now you add your parameter to the configuration, and you say, in this example, the parameter is an integer, not a boolean anymore. But let's say I want to use 1, I want to use, I don't know, 50, depending on your configuration. That means, cancel. Let me delete that one. Yeah, perfect. That means I have two parameters, and the value of the parameter will change depending on my configuration. So Azure is true for both, and development is false for both. That means I can now use the expression here in my configuration manager. We go to the configuration manager another time. Here we go. Now I will save this. This is already a very bad sign when you see something like this. Okay, it works perfect. Let me go to properties another time. And now you understand the idea of the expression. Here I can easily assign a parameter, project parameter, to this expression to change the value, the setting connect by proxy, depending on my configuration. That's perfectly fine because now I can execute the package either with a VNet peering. That means I'm completely skipping the self-hosted integration runtime, or if the setting is true, it will use the self-hosted integration runtime. So it's on me to decide which connection I want to use to access the on-premise data sources. Okay, so what I do next is there's another setting you have to be aware of. There's a setting which is not connect by proxy, instead it is called execute on proxy. It's very close, but it's not the same. Execute on proxy is only available for SQL tasks. You can see it here, it's a SQL task, and it's the same. So I want to execute maybe a stored procedure on my on-premise SQL Server, and I want to do it by a connection which is established by the self-hosted integration runtime or by VNet. Yeah, I also have to say execute on proxy is either false or true. Okay. So in the end, I can deploy this solution, and I want to deploy it to SSIS in Azure Data Factory, and here I can start the setup. I already did it. I think it is a much better approach to do it up front. Next, and here, this is the SSIS DB. You can see it here. So this is the result of our Azure SSIS integration runtime setup. So Microsoft will create an Azure SQL database or maybe a managed instance for me. And I have, as you already know from your on-premise environment, one database called SSIS-DB. It's exactly the same. So, and I already have the packages deployed. So that is the reason why you can see the packages here already, the project and folder and so forth. But anyway, so let's give it a try. I will overwrite what I have. So let me go down. I just need to get the password. That is the server. So you can see the server name here. That is my current admin. Let me go back. And this is my password. We need to connect. So now Visual Studio connects to the SSIS-DB. Hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. I guess the problem is, for whatever reason, the SSIS-DB is still not started. This is strange. Why it is not starting? I mean, sometimes it takes 10 minutes, but it is already, I don't know, trying half an hour or whatever. That's great. I mean, if it is not starting for reasons I don't understand, we can still continue with the presentation, but I cannot deploy. That is the only difference here. So let's wait another, I don't know, 10 minutes. I have no idea why it is not starting. The good thing is you do not see any meaningful information. I don't know if it will start in 10 minutes, it will never start, or it will take 2 hours. I have no idea. So anyway, so I guess you get the idea. So here I need to pass the connection string, the login, and the password. And finally, you can see currently I'm not able to connect because the SSIS-DB is not available. I can deploy it. Yeah, let's consider I have the connection, then I can deploy. That means in the end, we should see something like this. We have a project, we have the folder, we have the project here, and within the project we have our packages. So now, in order to decide in your either in ADF or when you execute your package, and this is another way to execute your SSIS packages, right? Either by connecting through the Azure Self-Hosted Integration Runtime or by VNet, it is worth to implement two environments. We can see an environment which I named Azure Data Factory Integration Runtime as Proxy. It's a very meaningful name, very long name, but everyone understands what is the environment about. And I have another one which is called Azure Data Factory VNet. So let me go to this one. So you can see that the variables which I used within my project, yeah, we still can see them. One second, let me go back here. You can see them in my project, in my environment as well. So I have a connect by proxy, execute on proxy, and for sure it is a Boolean, yeah. And I have a value assigned which is false, and I have another environment, this one, which is the same, yeah, same variables, but this time the value is true. So now I can decide if I want to execute the package using the self-hosted integration runtime or using the VNet integration. So it's on me to decide. I have two options, and I can decide on runtime. So perfect. So now I'm already in the cloud because all my packages are now available in the SSIS-DB. Is this still running? Just want to see. It's still running. Don't ask me. I cannot even stop it. I cannot even restart. I guess I need to wait. But anyway, it is like it is. So all your SSIS packages are now located in your Azure SQL database, in your SSIS DB catalog database. That's different. I'm in my Azure portal now. I do not have to have an on-premise data VM or server anymore in order to run my SSIS packages. That's all. From here, I can already start the SSIS packages by simply using the SSIS DB catalog create execution stop procedure, which is available. That means, let me give it a try. Hopefully it works. I hope it works because it works. Okay, perfect. At least I do not get any error message. So I decided when I execute my packages, in most of the times I decided to wait for the final result from the stop procedure, from the execution of the stop procedure, by adding the synchronized parameter name, the parameter synchronized to the package execution. That means I will get the success message when the package was executed successfully. Because if you do not do it, you know it already, I'm pretty sure, when you execute the stop procedure in an asynchronous mode, you get a success message, even your package will fail. So, but this is just, I would say, an enhancement. Nevertheless, what you have now is, let me go to the package. You can see dbnet, Azure enabled. That is the way you call your stop procedure, your package. And there's this one. We can see I have reports available, like you have on your on-premise SQL Server. You can see the package was executed successfully. So that is one way. You do not need to execute your packages in Azure Data Factory now. You can set up runbooks. Yeah? And the runbook is nothing else than a PowerShell script, which will execute this stop procedure. For sure, you will use parameter. You will not hardcode anything, but it is definitely a way to do it. There's no need to execute the packages from Azure Data Factory. It's a little bit more handy to do it, but it's also a lot of overhead to do it in Azure Data Factory, because for every single package you need to create a new pipeline. I will show it in a minute, but for me it is really important that you understand that you can do it from here. So let me go back to Azure Data Factory, and I hope it's starting. It's unbelievable. Oh, perfect. It's running. It just took half an hour or whatever. Anyway, that's good, because now we can execute the packages within Azure Data Factory. So let me go back to the pipeline. I have already five pipelines available. And I will give you one example of how to do it. So let's create a new pipeline and search for SSIS. So here we have our activity within my pipeline. I do not want to give it a meaningful name because I will drop it. And 1 second. Okay. So, and from Azure Data Factory, now I have the option to execute my packages, which are hosted by the SQL database SSIS DB. So it's very easy to do. So we have to go to settings. And now we have to select the Azure SSIS Integration Runtime. That is the only SSIS integration runtime which is available here. I can use more than one, but again, I cannot share the same SSIS integration runtime across several Azure Data Factory instances. And I can pick up the package location, SSIS-DB, perfect. Now I can use, or I can see all the folders. dbnets is the only folder. I have only one project, but I have several packages. Let me use this one. And here, you know, I can execute the package either in basic, logging, none, or performance or verbose. These settings are, I mean, these are SSIS logging level settings. Still the same. I can do the same by executing the stored procedure or kick off the package from here and say, I want to execute this one. It's exactly the same, right? Yeah, here I can do whatever I want to do. I can assign the variable and I can, in the advanced tab, I can change the logging level. It's exactly the same. Yeah? It's really SSIS related. So let me go back. And here, now I can decide whether I want to use the self-hosted integration runtime or not, because I have environment variable installed in my SSIS DB. So the environment variables are also visible within Azure Data Factory. Let's give it a try with Azure Data Factory Integration Runtime as proxy. That means it will use the self-hosted integration runtime to access my SQL Server, which is currently running on an on-premise VM. So here, this is nothing I need to worry about, but you can see these are the SSIS parameters, which are now, depending on my environment variables, overwritten at runtime. So the connection manager, I do not want to change anything from now. And we have some property overrides. I do not want to do it. I just want to show it to you. And we have user properties. Anyway, when I now execute the package, it will take maybe 30 seconds. And in the end, we should see new data available. This is my VM. And this is the target table where I want to load the data. So you can see it on the timestamp. So this is not the very latest. I'm pretty sure now it is truncated, and maybe in 10 seconds or whatever, we should see new data. So let me switch back. And we see the information here as well.
I have a question, Torsten. We have a minute. So we have Fatima. Thanks for placing the question there, Fatima. And she could not quite hear you clearly. Why would you connect by a proxy?
Why would I connect by a proxy? Okay. So the proxy is the self-hosted integration runtime. Yeah, it is considered to be a proxy, or maybe call it a gateway or whatever. So the reason of using a proxy, which is the self-hosted integration runtime, is for two reasons. First of all, you are not able to add your on-premise data sources to the same VNet, because it has a lot of, you have to do a lot of changes within your VNet architecture, right? The other reason is maybe you do not have the driver available to access the on-premise data source. So therefore, you need to have a VM and an integration runtime, which is running on the VM and which can consume and use the driver which is installed there just to access the on-premise data source. And I mean, these are the only two reasons I see here. Yeah, if you are able, and this is what I was trying to explain in the beginning of the session, when you are able to skip the need of a self-hosted integration runtime as a proxy or as a gateway, you should always do it, because we will also see that the performance is, comparing to a VNet integration, horrible, because there is an overhead, right? We will go through the self-hosted integration runtime, and then we will establish a connection to the on-premise server. We will read the data. We will bring the data into our, you remember the story as a staging within our blob container. And from here, we will use the data within our SSIS packages. That's, it fails. Okay, that's interesting. The execute must be indicate result of output parameter. Okay, no worry. I'm pretty sure it is still work, or it worked. No, it doesn't work. Anyway, I will show you I just want to show you how to execute the package. Here is a pipeline for sure, which is working. Yeah. Maybe I missed something with a password. I don't know, but I hope at least even this package is failing. I hope first of all you understand how to execute a package, and second you understand why you need to use a gateway, right? So the next thing, or there's maybe 10 minutes left, then I'm done. Adriano, can you do me the favor? Can you go on mute, please, another time? That would be great. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Thanks a lot. Oh, thanks. Okay, cool. Okay, so now your trouble begins, because you need to worry about packages which are dependent on Windows authentication, right? Maybe you have a user which you use, yeah, in your on-premise environment, a Windows user, to access your on-premise data sources. The Azure Data Factory cannot use Windows authentication, at least not from the current architecture. You remember the main CMD. Main CMD will give the Azure Data Factory access to the on-premise data sources by the Windows user and the password, but you have to configure it first. There is another way to do it, or maybe there are 3 ways to do it. First way is, and this is something I'm pretty sure no one can use, but it is available. So what you can do is the following. Let me go to this one. So within your SSIS DB, you can execute a stored procedure called, it's for sure, it's SSIS DB. I copied this from Microsoft, by the way. I just want to make it a little bit more clearer. SSIS DB, I think that's right. Yes, within the SSIS DB, there's one procedure called catalog set execution credentials. That means you create a credential, which is a user, a domain, and a password, which will be used by every pipeline which is dependent on Windows authentication. But that means you have one user for your SSIS DB. And I think this is not possible. I've never ever seen an environment where I have only one Windows user within my entire environment. I think this will not work. It is a way when you have a situation or an environment or setup like this, you always use the same domain, the same Windows user, for sure the same password, to access all your on-premise data sources. Then this is the easiest way to achieve it, right? Just set up your credential. I don't think this is something which is very practical, but okay, it is there. So now you have, I mean, maybe even in the same SSIS package, in the same package, you have several different Windows users to access your on-premise data sources. How can you do it? First of all, what we can do is the following. Let me go to this one. So when we have, let's go one step back. So you remember the credential, which is valid for the entire SSIS DB. I don't see any situation where it really makes sense, but maybe you have at least for the same package, just one user, maybe a file share, maybe a SQL Server, which you will use. So that means you only need to have one Windows authentication per package. That means you can say, this is my SSIS package. You can see it's exactly the same package which I was trying to execute in the other pipeline, which fails for reasons I don't understand. I do not want to debug it now, because I'm pretty sure this will work. I can now use Windows authentication. So here I'm overwriting the credentials which I set by the procedure. And if there are no credentials, for sure they need to apply as Windows authentication. And we can use the domain name, the username, and the password from your Azure Key Vault. That means I have an Azure Key Vault here. Let me go to the Key Vault. And we have some secrets. And one secret is maybe, I'm pretty sure that is the one which I'm using, which is my VM DB Nets SQL admin password, right? It is just the same information which I have in my main CMD otherwise, right? So here I can overwrite the Windows credentials by an Azure Key Vault, right? So that means now the username and the password, which is used within my Windows authentication, within my connection string, is replaced by these credentials. So when I execute this now, let me give it a try. I'm still a little bit worried about this failing pipeline here, but let me drop this one first. I hope this time it works. Are you sure you want to delete pipeline 1? Yes, I want, because it wasn't working. Let me refresh it, and hopefully this works. Yes, okay, something went wrong with the pipeline 1. That is always the case when you do something quick and dirty. But anyway, let me refresh it, and we can see data in my, this is my on-premise VM. So I'm sending data to my on-premise data source. I'm not getting the data from there. I'm sending the data to the VM. It's the same, right? I have to access the server by either my VNet or my proxy. And you can see the date, which is very close to the current time. So that's fine. It works. So, and here we can see that I decided to use it to establish the connection by my VNet peering. Let me do the same for the proxy, and hopefully this works. Maybe that was the reason why the other package was failing. Maybe for whatever reason, the integration runtime is not working anymore on the VM. Again, I cannot access the VM because Microsoft does not allow me to reset my password for some reasons I don't understand. Pretty sure it's my fault, but I wasn't able to solve it. So it is in progress. It's still running. So you remember the first time, the first execution used the VNet integration. This package execution, it's the same package, but this time we decided to use the self-hosted integration runtime. And you can see already the duration, right? We are almost by 1 minute. It takes much longer. We check whether the data are already there. Okay, truncated, still loading. Still in progress. It will not fail, but it will take, I have no idea, 20 times longer than the VNet integration. So that is another reason to avoid using it failed, okay, for whatever reason. I have no idea what is wrong with the self-hosted integration runtime, but believe me, the duration is, even if it will not fail, the duration is pretty much the same. So maybe a minute comparing to a few seconds. Yeah, so I need to check what is wrong with the self-hosted integration runtime. But again, therefore, I need to have access to the VM, which I currently do not have. So anyway, remember that when you have a Windows authentication, there is a way to override the credentials, the connection here, this connection, the password and the user, by your by an Azure Key Vault. And for sure, you have to enable Windows authentication because otherwise the package will fail, right? So let me go to another example which I have here. This is about SQL authentication. SQL authentication is really not a big deal. You only have to worry about the connection. You do not even need to worry about passwords, sorry, because the password will come up either from the key vault, or if you do not need, if you do not want to use a key vault, it is masked. That means when you deploy the package from here, this one, the SQL Authentication, the password which you will use in your connection manager will be visible for ADF only, and for sure you can override it with another password, yeah, which by an Azure Key Vault, or you can reuse the same password, and you will see a lot of stars. Yeah, so you cannot see the password here, which is good. Last thing I want to share with you is, let me see whether here we have something special. Yeah. So when I have Windows authentication and I do not have my credential, you remember this one? Now where's the credential? This one. So I do not have a credential. I do not have a main CMD. I do not have custom setup. Right? Remember the Express custom setup in my Azure SSIS integration runtime, which I presented maybe half an hour ago. So all these kind of things are not available. So, oh no, sorry, all these things are not available, but not the main CMD. The main CMD is something you want to maintain. So then you only have to bring, or you have to maintain your main CMD, and it automatically works because Azure Data Factory now compares the connection string, that one, with this one here, with your main CMD, which I have here, and it looks for an appropriate connection string and use the user and the password, which you either configured in your main CMD or maybe in your custom setup. So I mix it up. That is the way not to overwrite something in your Azure Data Factory pipeline, but reuse or use something which you already configured upfront in main CMD or custom Express setup. Yeah, so that was the idea here. And last thing I want to share is, I mean, you are now you upload all your package to your SSIS DB. Sorry, here. This is my SSIS DB here, and sometimes, I mean, you have a file share or whatever, or maybe let's for the moment let's assume we have a file share. A file share is also considered to be an on-premise data source. Sure, I can set up a new UNC path. I can use this in SSIS. I need to have a Windows authentication, a Windows user, Windows authentication, a password, a user, which is not very handy. So there's another way in order to have some kind of a hybrid cloud approach. What you can do is you can already replace file share by a blob storage or maybe by a data lake or whatever. So therefore you have to download, and now I want to be precise because I didn't remember the name anymore, SSIS, ADF, Azure Integration. I do not remember the name. Yeah, it's called Azure Feature Pack for Integration Services. Yeah. So for whatever reason, it will always use German. I mean, it makes sense, but I told Edge I always want to see the English version. But okay. So here you can download the feature pack, and within the feature pack, you get several task and connection managers, as you can see here, in order to replace existing on-premise data sources. For example, your file share, which you can easily replace by, I don't know, a data lake, a storage connection manager, or maybe by an Azure storage connection manager, so that you can get rid of the dependent on-premise data sources. One example I have here is I configured a blob storage. It really only takes a few seconds. We can now use a new connection, and when you install the feature pack, the Azure Storage Connection Manager is available. And here we can say I I need to give it a meaningful, well, not a meaningful, I have to give it an account name. So the account name is nothing else than, let me go to my storage account. Storage account. That is my account name. So assuming you have all your data in your storage account, that is the idea. Account name. So account key, the access key. That one. Here we go. I can access this one. Again, it's much better to have a managed identity for that, but disconnection. It works. Now I can bring all my files into a storage account and replace the file share, on-premise file share. We do it from here because we can now use either as a destination or as a source. Don't ask me why. Microsoft really have I think some of the problems are still not prepared for high resolution, as you can see here. Yeah? So this is my blob storage. This is the connection manager. This is already very hard to read. This is the container name. So I need to, sorry for that, but yeah, this is ADF destination. When we go to the storage container, we can see there's one table which is called sales LT, yeah, address txt. That is my destination. It is just there because I executed the package before the presentation. And here we can say the blob file format is either text or avro. And we can say column delimiter characters, column has headers and so forth, yeah, and compression. So that means by replacing at least these kind of dependent on-premise data sources like file share or whatever, we can still use the SSIS Azure Data Lift and Shift approach, but we are able to get rid of all the dependent on-premise data sources by replacing it by an appropriate connection or task which we will get from the feature pack. In order to execute this, I need to execute the package. It will fail. This is really the last example I want to share with you. Package will fail. What you need to do instead is you have to execute this package. Oops. In Azure. Now it works. So you can see it is preparing a bit, and maybe in, I don't know, 20 seconds or whatever, we will see a result. And that only works because your SSIS package is enabled for Azure. You remember the process we followed in order to enable your project for Azure SSIS lift and shift. Once you did it, you are able to execute your package in Azure. Hopefully, it should work. I'm pretty sure it will take a while, but it will work. It will fail for whatever reason. Just something is wrong here with whatever. What is it? I don't know. I need to check it. I mean, it's already odd that it took half an hour to start my SSIS DB. I need to go to my VM, but the VM honestly is not used in this data factory, in this pipeline. Anyway, believe me, it works, and it worked already 2 hours ago. I didn't change anything. No, it doesn't work anymore. I have no clue about it, but I'm pretty sure when you do it on your own, it will work because something is broken here. I have no idea. I do not want to debug it now because it will be very lazy for you. Anyway, so let me summarize what we have seen so far. So you remember the first task you need to do is set up your self-hosted integration runtime first, right? Because when you set up your Azure SSIS integration runtime and you want to use your self-hosted integration runtime within Azure SSIS integration runtime, the self-hosted integration runtime have to be there. Maybe that is the right order. First of all, set up your self-hosted integration runtime. Second, set up your VNet peering, right, as an alternative. Again, this is a much better approach. Then configure your Azure SSIS integration runtime depending on your current workload, on your need. Yeah, remember node size and everything like this, failover, blah, blah, blah. And then you can prepare or assess your SSIS packages in order to see where you have a migration blocker. You need to eliminate these migration blockers for sure. Once you did it, you can easily deploy your package to your SSIS DB, which is nothing else than you have seen a SQL database, an SSIS DB catalog DB. And from here, you can either execute the packages by stored procedure. You remember that one, for example, or you can schedule this one by runbook or whatever. You can even use the SQL Server agent when you're on a managed instance, or you can use the Azure Data Factory pipelines, right, by using an execute SSIS package. And here you need to especially worry about the Windows authentication. You have several ways to do it, either by the main CMD, the Express setup, Express custom setup, yeah, in your SSIS integration runtime, or you can overwrite the settings. You can create a credential which will be used over the entire SSIS DB. There's several ways to do it, if you remember. And last consideration is get rid of your on-premise data sources by maybe replacing it by data lake, blob storage, whatever is appropriate. That's it. Any questions?
All right. Yes, we do. And folks, remember, got a question, leverage the live chat right now during the presentation. Enter your questions in the live chat during the presentation. If the presentation has already completed, use the comment section below to enter your question. So let me take a look over here. Yes, we do have a question. Now, Fatima was asking us, why does this take a longer time to run? Specifically, she means, why does the pipeline execution with IR takes longer to execute?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an overhead, right? When we go back to this picture. So you can imagine when I have my resources in the same VNet and I can get the data from another resource within the same VNet within an express route, which you can configure, you have a much better throughput and less overhead comparing to your integration, self-hosted integration runtime, because you have a lot of more network, I would say, traffic involved when you use your self-hosted integration runtime, because we have an Azure Data Factory here, which now access the VM where the self-hosted integration runtime is located. From here, it has to go to the on-premise data source, which is not always the same VM where your on-premise data sources are located, for sure, yeah. And then the data will travel the same way, but in the other direction back to Azure Data Factory. I mean, you can already imagine that this is a big overhead, and that is the reason why it takes so much longer, so much more time.
All right. Let us know, Fatima, whether the explanation here came out clear enough there for you as to understand the difference there. All right. And folks, we're going to wait here just for one more minute for your questions. Just remember, use the live chat. We have a yeah. All right, great to hear, Fatima. That was clear. So
Okay, cool.
thank you very much, Torsten. Thank you, Fatima, for posing the question. I am just taking a final look here on the live chats if there are any additional questions, Torsten. No, we are all set.
Cool.
So, like to, can you post your slide, your initial slide there, initial PowerPoint slide?
Yeah, let me do it. Where do we have it? Inside SQL Server, somewhere I have it
So,
here.
folks, thank you very much for watching the presentation here. We are getting Torsten contact information showing right now. All right, and showing the you have his email, Twitter, and the website. Different ways to contact him. So thank you very much, Torsten, for sharing some great knowledge with us.
Welcome.
Making the time to be here to deliver, as well as to those attendees, great audience here engaging and with us and learning here some insightful information. I think that presentation is pretty unique. Not so many people talking about different ways of lift and shift SSIS with Azure Data Factory. So folks understand that you may have to come back, replay the video more than one time. If you want to do step by step, a lot of the information here provides you on how to do that. Very hands-on presentation, single slide, right? It is literally a single slide. And if this is the type of content you like to see, remember, like, subscribe, very important. Drop a comment there. Even if it's to say, hey, love the presentation. And remember to click the bell for your reminders. And with that, take a final check here at the comments. All right, it sounds we are all set. So I'd like to, on behalf of the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group, like say thank you all for making the time and watching us, for Torsten to be here to present. And stay tuned. Coming up on next month, June, will be Databricks. So if you're interested to learn about Databricks, we're going to be having presentations on that topic. All right, folks. So thank you all. And have a great day there. Thanks for having lunch with us. Or dinner, depending on where you're at. All right, y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.